the question, or Mr Parker did, and without that increased investment, in other words, unless the SOEs put their money up, there is not the slightest prospect of meeting our targets. In other words, there was no money.
Come now to question number 5 in the name of the Honourable Clayton Cosgrove. I beg your pardon.
Sorry, Mr. Speaker.
If the honourable member is happy, Jeanette Fitzsimonds.
Taking on board that last reply. But my final question to the Prime Minister is, did he, in deciding to spend more on new roads, take into account research quoted in The Economist that spending on buses and trains creates 19% more jobs than the same money spent on new roads, or research quoted by the Victoria Transport Institute that each $1 million shifted away from purchasing motor fuel into anything else creates 4.5 new jobs per $1 million?
The Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr Speaker, reaching the decisions we reached today and the decisions that we'll be reaching about further infrastructure investment over the months ahead, we've taken on board the fact that our roading infrastructure has a need for improvement that will help the environment. That's not to say there isn't the need for further investment in both rail and public transport, and I can assure the member both will get additional funding.
Point of order, Jeanette Fitzsimons.
I seek leave of the House to table 2 documents. The first one is a paper, Smart Transportation Economic Stimulation, from the Victoria Transport Policy Institute, that contains one of those figures I quoted.
Is there any objection to that document being tabled? There is none.
And the second one is The Economist, be careful what you wish for, spending on infrastructure could easily run amok.
Any objection to that document being tabled? There is none.
Thank you.
We come now to question number 5 in the name of the Honourable Clayton Cosgrove.
Mr Speaker, my question is to the Minister of Corrections and asks, does she have confidence in the Department of Corrections? If so, why?
The Honourable Judith Collins.
Mr Speaker, I am confident that the Department understands that my expectations are significantly higher than those of the previous Minister, Phil Goff.
The Honourable Clayton Cosgrove.
Supplementary, Mr Speaker. To the Minister, does the Minister agree with her colleague Simon Power when he said that, and I quote, 2 escapes in 5 days was a worry, unquote? And if so, how would she characterise the 6 escapes in 7 days that occurred in January, and another one which occurred from North Waikato Prison this morning?
Easily, actually.
Order. The Minister, please call.
Mr Speaker.
The Honourable Judith Collins.
Mr Speaker, in relation to the escapes that the member has referred to, there are 2 escapes that are correctly part of corrections. The others were actually escapes not from corrections but from police. And if you'd like to put down a question on my other portfolio, I'd be very happy to give him the answer.
Melissa Lee.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Supplementary question to the Minister of Corrections. What action has the Minister taken so far in the corrections portfolio?
Mr Speaker.
Honourable Judith Collins.
Well, quite a lot, actually. We've had a very action-packed few months. So far, I have visited 3 prisons, including maximum security Auckland Prison. I have spoken to and listened to prison staff and asked their ideas on what improvements can be made to ensure they can do their jobs better. I have spoken to and listened to the prison unions and sought their ideas on practical ways the corrections service can be improved. I have visited and listened to community probation and psychological services, something the previous minister never did. I have reintroduced the Corrections Amendment Bill, which was left to languish by the previous government. I have asked Corrections to review the legislation and remove roadblocks to private management of prisons, and I've asked that this be done quickly. I have sought a review of security classifications for prisoners and seeing if there is any way that this can be fine-tuned to better protect the public and correction staff. I have given my support to the construction of prefabricated prisons buildings that to achieve cost reductions in the vicinity of 25 to 40% initially compared to the cost of traditional bed and campus-style cells.
Order. The Minister
I've asked the correction. It's just so much, Mr Speaker. Just a little bit more. But mostly, Mr Speaker, I have instructed corrections to work with Vodafone and Telecom to ensure cell phone towers built under the previous government in prison grounds in Auckland Prison are relocated as quickly as possible. And by the way, I've also asked that double bunking proceed.
Answers. Before I call the honourable member, I just remind ministers again, answers to questions are not a time for speeches. It's difficult to hold the opposition to brief questions if the answers are very, very long. The Honourable Clayton Cosgrove.
Supplementary, Mr Speaker. Why is it that it took the minister 8 days before she publicly responded to the issue of 6 escapes in a week, given the seriousness of the issue? And when she finally did respond, she dismissed this as, quote, an operational matter, unquote, and then tried to blame the previous government, rather than providing assurances to the affected victims and their families. And apart from engaging in a tiki tour around the country, prison to prison, what specific action has she taken on prison escapes, given we've had another one from North Waikato this morning?
Mr Speaker.
The Honourable Judith Collins.
Mr Speaker, perhaps the member who's just resumed his seat did not listen to the answer. The 6 escapes he's talking about, there's only 2 of them on corrections, and frankly not one escape is acceptable, and that's why this minister is going to hold people to account for their actions and inactions. And right now, Mr Cosgrove, I'm holding them to account, which is far more than 9 years of a Labour government ever did. Not one person lost their job.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Settle down. Settle down.
Order. Order.
Mr Speaker.
Order. Order. I've called the Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr Speaker, has she, given that she's blamed this on the Minister of Police rather than the Minister of Corrections, talked to her colleague about this?
Well, of course, Mr Speaker, of course, in the National Party, we actually don't need to do that because I am the same minister. But I can tell that particular member, unlike the Labour Party where they had to have a meeting, well, actually, what she said was this, that the police are asked right now to find out why it is that they are not restraining prisoners in the same method that corrections do, and they have been asked to look at the law changes that need to happen to change it, because this minister is not going to sit back for 9 years like that member did and wait for something else to happen, like Carl Kuchenbecker being killed.
The Honourable Clayton Cosgrove.
Supplementary. Cool down, Nick. You know, a nice cold towel will fix your problem round the head. Mr Speaker, a supplementary to the Minister. Is the Minister concerned that the significant improvements within the Corrections Department which occurred over the last 9 years, which led to an 84% reduction, which I'll say it again for the member at the back, which led to an 84% reduction in the number of prison escapes and a 90% reduction in the number of serious assaults on prison staff, all occurred under the previous government, despite the fact that there was an increase in the prison population of 3,200, is now being compromised. And if not, as she takes advice from the member beside her, why not?
Mr Speaker.
The Honourable Judith Collins.
Mr Speaker, I can well understand that under the Labour government, people were in fact queuing up to get into prison. But I can tell them that under this minister, people might not want to be there.
David Garrett.
Mr Speaker, a supplementary question.